This is the replay for the 5-day mini menopause challenge, and let's just get started. Now, this is what we're going to talk about. First of all, we're going to talk about how much time do you really have, how to set a goal, the real reason for exercise, the reason you should stop dieting, what you should eat more of, and then if you're interested, an opportunity to work with me. So first of all, let's start by doing a little experiment. Now, close your eyes or not, just imagine. And I want you to think about an annual event, something that you look forward to, something that you reminisce about, something that's really important to you. All right, open your eyes and either think or write down your age. And now here's a fun fact. Women in Canada, the average age of mortality is 83.9 years. Let's say 84 years. Now let's do some math. How many of those annual events do you have left? So take the mortality, age, 84 years, subtract your age. And for me, that number is 24. I have 24 of those annual events if I'm lucky. Now, I also want you to think about someone that's close to the age of 84. Now, what is their life like? Is their world expanding? Is it shrinking? Now, I want you to think about you. Is your world getting better? Have you stopped doing things that you've loved in the past? Have you started doing new things? Have you started to sit out on certain things? And what are you currently doing to protect the quality of life so you can fully enjoy however many years that you have left? That's a bit grim, but it does put things in perspective. Let's talk about some good news. The thing is, if you felt like, hey, I'm not necessarily as healthy as I'd like to be, health change doesn't have to be hard. It can actually start with one thing and you can make it small. Like my client, Diane, who lost over 50 pounds by one change, and that was she took the sugar out of her coffee. Now, that was not the only change she made to lose 50 pounds, but that was the beginning. She tried that for a few weeks. She was successful. Then she changed the brand of yogurt to include more protein. And from there, she started walking. And from there, she added, a couple workouts. So she made changes very slowly over time. Think about it. How many of you have tried to do things like cut out sugar, gluten, wine, or whatever your guilty pleasure is? Maybe started a fitness routine, tried to follow some kind of meal plan, tried to lose weight, tried to go to bed earlier, institute all these changes all at once. And how did that work out? The thing is that change happens when you feel good, when you're enjoying the process, and when you find yourself winning. And when you do too much, that's not necessarily the case. So my message is to stop doing too much too soon and start with something small. So how do you start? Let's get on to thinking about goals. Think about setting a process goal instead of an outcome goal. So a process goal is, let's talk about outcome first, because that's what we often set. And that might be something like, I want to lose 10 pounds. Now, of course, you could always lose 10 pounds, but you're not in control of the outcome. You're not in control of when that's specifically going to happen. But a process goal is something like a check the box off goal. It's like, I'll get 8 hours of sleep, or I'm going to walk these certain amount of steps, or I'm going to drink this certain amount of water a day, so that every day you can check off the box and know that you're successful. We want to set goals that are specific rather than things like, I'll eat better, because when you say that, you never know when you succeeded. You want it to be measurable. You don't want to just say, I'm going to eat more vegetables or more protein. How much? What exactly are you going to do? You want to make it achievable and realistic. For example, you don't want to say, I'm going to run a marathon if you haven't run around the block. And by the way, I would never ask you to run a marathon. So let's talk about a few things to consider when setting some goals. Let's get down to some facts. Now, I would highly recommend starting exercise, but not for weight loss. Exercise, here's a study that shows that caloric restriction has more of a profound and consistent effect on weight loss compared to training alone. You'll see that throughout this presentation, I have scientific references, and you're welcome to have these if I can send them your way if you'd like. The action related to this is that we want to, if weight loss is your goal, you want to do it through calorie restriction, calorie deficit, through nutrition, rather than through exercise. And caloric deficit can be created in many ways, not just eating less. I can teach you things about that. You want to be exercising for fun and function. You want to find something that you love and do it regularly, and doing it more often is more beneficial than doing it for longer periods. So rather than doing something for an hour once a week, it's more beneficial to do something for 10 minutes, 5 times a week. And having social support and accountability are very helpful in helping you stay the course to maintain that routine of exercise. Now, resistance training, on the vein of exercise, resistance training really is a must as we age. And this study is, I have several studies. I've actually removed some from the presentation because it was getting too long, but there's overwhelming evidence that shows that resistance training is really helpful for anti-aging and helping us, age well, because there's a gradual strength decline from age 30 until 50, and even more decline after 60 if we're not doing anything to offset that. There's going to be functional losses in strength and balance, which opens us up to injury. And so resistance training can counteract those age-related impairments. And the way strength training works is it increases strength by increasing mass. Now that makes us nervous when we hear mass, but mass does not mean bulk, because muscle is more dense and takes up less space. So your clothes are going to actually fit better when you have more muscle on your body than when you have an equal amount of fat. So the action related to resistance training is find some way to do it 2 to 3 times a week. And it can also include body weight training. I often talk about things like movement snacks, which are things like, this is an easy way to start. Every time you go to the bathroom, do 10 squats over the toilet. Every time you brush your teeth, finish with doing 10 push-ups on the bathroom counter. These are body weight exercises that are entry level for anybody. And over time, they really add up to, even if they're not increasing your muscle mass, they will maintain what you have, which is really important and basically the fountain of youth. Now, I want to talk about something that's, the acronym is NEAT, and that is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And it includes anything that's not exercise related, but is something that burns calories, that has you moving. So it just burns calories at a low, like it's a low energy workload with trivial movements, even fidgeting, cleaning, walking, standing. These are things that would be included in NEAT. Now, this study shows that obviously there's a greater energy expenditure over time when you're moving more. So for example, increasing your activity from resting levels, laying down, to sitting, you're going to increase overall expenditure 5 to 10%. From laying down to standing, 10 to 20%. Or from laying down to walking, 100 to 200%. Think about your workout. You may be burning calories for 30 minutes, but NEAT can be increase your caloric burn for your entire waking hours. So as opposed to like 30 minutes of calorie burning from exercise, it could potentially be 16 hours of calorie burning. And it can just be simply moving more, like walking, increasing your step count. So however many steps you're doing now, just increase it. So if you're doing 3,000 steps, try and get 4,000 steps. And, 7,500 to 10,000 steps daily is a good goal, but you don't have to start there. Like I said, if you're only getting 3,000 steps, just try and get more. I'm returning to walking. My dog's passed away, and I've just had an aversion to walking. As much as it's fantastic, it's just been heartbreaking for me. So I've kind of just gotten back to it. And within a 10-minute walk, I can get 2,000 steps in. So I know for me, my health has greatly benefited from, 25 plus years of daily 2-a-day walks. Sometimes they're 10 minutes, only 10 minutes. Sometimes they're longer, but it's those small things that add up over time to improve our health. Now let's talk nutrition. Diets don't work, and you should stop dieting. Let's talk about this study that took 22,000 participants, 14 popular diets in the study, and at 6 months, there was a modest weight loss, only 3 to 5 kilos. There were significant cardiovascular improvements, which is fantastic. But at 12 months, no matter what diet you were on, the weight reduction and cardiovascular improvements largely disappeared. So within a year, for most participants, they were no better than when they started. So the thing with diets is they often create taboo foods, which tends to lead to cravings. Think that food has no morality. There's no good food or bad food. There's just good investment and maybe poor investment food and drink. Now, good investment foods are foods that fill you up and are nutritionally dense, help you meet your goals. Poor investment foods tend to be hyper palatable, low nutritional density, high calorie. And I don't think I need to go into a lot of detail. Most people know what I'm talking about, good and poor investment foods. But the fact is in every diet, there's room for both good and less good or poor investment foods. Because diets don't work, not like allowing for some of those poor investment foods makes your lifestyle so much more livable. All food and drink are fine in moderation. You just have to learn how to incorporate them into your diet so that you can still meet your goals and not sabotage all the hard work that you're doing. Now, one thing that I will advocate for is eating more of the superhero macro, and that is protein. Protein keeps you fuller longer. It supports fat loss over weight loss. And the mechanism by which it does that is it preserves and builds lean muscle. And lean muscle is what puts the sexy in your genes. It keeps you functional. And I always refer to it as the fountain of youth. This is a study that just says that consuming more than the recommended dietary allowance, the RDA, it reduces body weight, and it reduces it by decreasing fat mass. So in other words, you're going to be losing fat instead of losing lean muscle. And the recommended RDA is really only 0.36 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And that is really just to prevent malnutrition, not optimal health. So a good place to start with how much protein is just thinking about 100 grams of protein daily. When we work together, I'll give you more specific macro goal for protein, but generally for women, 100 grams of protein split up throughout the course of the day is a good ballpark. And when I say 100 grams of protein, I don't mean putting a chicken breast on the scale and having it weigh out to be 100 grams. I'm talking about the macronutrients. And this is something that I talk about a lot in my Nutrition Academy. It's not super complicated. If you can count points for Weight Watchers, you can count macros, and I don't make it it's not difficult. Other benefits of eating more protein. Eating more in specifically protein, is that there's less metabolic adaptation. When you go into a caloric deficit, what happens is your body just becomes super efficient. I mean, we are designed for survival. And so when we feed our bodies less calories, our body thinks, well, there must be a famine. So I am just going to shut down some processes. So you might not feel as energized, small things like everything continues to work, but it just works at a slower rate. So you're burning less calories. So that is not optimal because we are not in a famine. We are trying to actually burn more calories. So when I put someone in a caloric deficit, I try and get them to eat as much as possible just by creating a very small deficit, not a large deficit where you're starving. That makes it much more sustainable. It reduces binging. It is a slower process, but it's not a start and stop process because, how many of us have been gone on a super low calorie diet from Monday to Thursday, and by Friday you're ordering pizza, and Saturday and Sunday it's spring break. So over the course of the week, you have not created a deficit at all. And in fact, you may have gained weight and lost your all sense of hope. And it's just soul sucking. So we have a better quality of life and feel more in control of ourselves when we have just a small deficit that we maintain over a longer period of time. And like I said, our body has less adaptation to that. So another thing that I want you to consider is food logging of some sort. Here's a study that had 1,700 participants, and they kept daily food records. And within the study of 1,700, those that kept the food records lost twice as much weight as those that kept no records. So, food logging is not a sign of disordered eating. It creates awareness. I always liken it to going on a budget with your finances. If you weren't paying attention to what money you were earning and what money you're spending, it's pretty hard to know how to create that budget. So food logging is similar to creating a budget. You don't necessarily pay attention to the output because, things like an Apple Watch or the treadmill that says you've burnt so many calories, they're pretty inaccurate. But you can get fairly accurate with how much food you're intaking. So consider food logging using something like a free app like MyFitnessPal or the Fitbit app. You can also take pictures of food. What's really helpful is having some accountability and direction regarding food choices. This is something that I do in my challenges and with my nutrition coaching, whereby no food is off limits. It's just trying to fit those foods in a healthful way. And, I will ask questions like, oh, were you really hungry at 4:00? Oh, it's because of this. Could you add this to your lunch? So sometimes you cannot see the forest for the trees, and having those outside eyes is really helpful. Even if you're a seasoned dieter, a lot about nutrition, sometimes seeing what's going on for yourself is more difficult. So the other thing is consider daily weighing, don't run away screaming, or doing something like a hip to waist ratio or checking your favorite pants on a regular basis. Now let's talk about weight which is often is really the easiest way to measure. Not always the most accurate. It's most accurate when combined with things like measurements, pictures, trying on clothes, because the more data points you have, the more accurate the information you're going to get. Because just look at this chart that shows 9 reasons why your weight will fluctuate. So if you weigh yourself once a month, but maybe you had higher carbs the night before, or maybe you didn't drink enough water, maybe you had a late dinner, maybe you haven't had a good poop lately, or you had more sodium. And when you're not quantifying by food logging, it's hard to kind of pinpoint some of those things. It's hard to know, is that weight really accurate? But when you do more regular weighing, number one, it's counterintuitive, because I know some people are just terrified to get on the scale, but it kind of takes the power out of the scale when you just see it as a number, and then start to connect the dots that, oh, I had popcorn last night. That's more sodium. Oh, I've got my period, or my period's coming. It just, and that, oh, my weight is up. It really helps you to understand and see what's going on with your body when you're quantifying it. And if you can't do it, then that's what I do with my clients, so that they don't feel like jumping off a cliff. Knowledge really is power, because when you know better, you actually do better. But it can be very frustrating and challenging to know what's real, what's fact, what's fiction, especially in menopause, because honestly and sadly, menopausal women, we are the new cash cow. Marketers are seeing us as a fresh, like a fresh group of people that are getting kind of into a desperate situation and are willing to part with money for some things that just aren't healthful at all. And it really bothers me that that's the case. So I like to attack this, the challenges of menopause with science and with tried and true, down to earth, no magic pills, powders, potions, just, straight eating, things that your mom told you, your grandma told you, like move more. I'm not saying move more, eat less is the works all the time. But when we consistently move more and eat the right kinds of foods, we are going to be more successful in reaching our goals and feeling better along the way. Now, we talked about a couple things: resistance training, NEAT, food logging, increased protein. These are just some of the things that we mentioned. But, in this challenge, I'm going to be talking about 5 things throughout the course of the week. We're only on day 2, where we just talked, I think today was about protein. Yesterday was mindset. We're going to be talking fiber, sleep, stress. But really, as much as I'm introducing all this information, start with one thing. Pick one thing that you're going to commit to, and you're going to, remember that warm fuzzy event that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. When you pick that one thing, just like Diane picked taking sugar out of her coffee, you're going to be more likely to do that thing and implement it, so that over time, hopefully you'll implement other small things that you can enjoy those warm fuzzy events that we look forward to as we age. And if you want more support, I do have my 6-week summer meltdown coming up. I check your food log twice a week. I'm non-judgmental. I know that all things are there's no foods or drinks that are off limits. I do help you incorporate those. We have food camp every Monday night, 6 p.m. for an hour. You have access to me 24/7 through my coaching app for questions. I'm going to be giving you practical and actionable information so that you achieve long-lasting weight loss past the 6 weeks. The 6 weeks is like this mini challenge is just a jump start to get you going. But the 6 weeks is where you get to practice those habits for lifestyle and nutrition. You'll get a nutrition plan where I tell you, how many calories you should be eating, how much protein you should be eating. I kind of try and walk you through what you're currently eating, because the best diet you're on is the one that you're on, that with the foods that you love, but I just try and tweak them a little bit so that you can include those healthy or those like flavor favorites along with healthy versions of those flavor favorites. As well, you'll get continued access to the live and on-demand workouts, and you'll have lifetime access to my Nutrition Academy. My Nutrition Academy is short video tutorials of the most important and pressing concerns in menopause: why you're not losing weight, what's going on with your body, why protein is important, why carbs aren't evil or the devil, what kind of exercise should you be doing. We do a little bit more of a deep dive into that. Now, I'm going to be emailing you these testimonials of some clients that have worked with me. You'll be getting an email that has that 3-minute video in it. So I'll just leave that for now. And sadly, you could not, if you're watching the replay, you weren't able to ask questions in real time, but feel free to email me any questions. Like, just respond to the email that this link is in, and I'm happy to answer any questions related to the challenge, your challenges in menopause, or potentially the upcoming challenge. I would love to have you in it. I only invite 10 participants because I do such a deep dive into everyone's, it takes a lot of time in coaching, so I don't want to overextend myself. So I am about to stop the recording. I'm glad that you were able to join me, at least for the replay. Please email me your what you learned or any questions that you might have.